The unit Grammar Guides Writing Rules was created to teach 7th grade students good sentence structure. This would be a prerequisite project to our paragraph writing assignments. These are lifelong skills all students need for high school composition classes, as well as post-secondary education classes, and even careers expect employees to write effectively. Students will be researching answers to their questions about sentences, fragments, and run-ons. Their goal is to teach these skills to English language learners and special education students through the use of instructional videos, interactive websites, online quizzing, or through another option of the student's choice. Through students' research, they will accomplish a deeper understanding of writing good sentences and identifying and revising fragments and run-ons. In doing so, students will build writing skills they will use in paragraph and essay writing, as well as for proper communication skills throughout the rest of their lives, including high school, post-secondary school, and within their careers. The tutorial students create will pass these skills on to other students in EL and special education classes as well. This unit focuses on 3 essential questions the students will research and demonstrate their understanding of. What are the parts of a sentence? What is a fragment? Can I identify one and revise it? What is a run-on? Can I identify one and revise it? The first step in creating a project-based lesson is to look at the current curriculum. This grammar lesson is aligned with the Minnesota State Common Core Standards in Language Arts, as well as aligned with the ISTE standards. The Minnesota standards mostly focus on language strands as well as the media literacy strands for 7th grade students. ISTE standards include creativity and innovation, communication collaboration, research and information literacy, critical thinking, problem solving, and decision making, digital citizenship, as well as technology operations and concepts. This news release was written with the intent to set the stage for students, explain project expectations and its purpose. In doing so, I created an authentic real-world scenario through a mock news release which explains to the students their selection by the Southwest English Language Association to create instructional tutorials for EL and special education students in the context of sentence structure. The news release poses the challenge for students to face that engages their interest to the choices students are allowed to make in regards to the content and layout of their final product. The challenge is laid out by the 4 steps of project-based learning: define, plan, do, and review. This document also explains the 3 roles group members will choose to tackle. The first one is the leader. This person organizes the task to be completed in a timeline. He or she will keep the group on task, encourage group members, and will assist in other areas without taking over. The researcher would include 2 group members. These 2 are responsible for finding the content to use as credible research, assign reading tasks to other group members, and to gather and keep track of the data, notes, and the content created by the group. The designer is the group student tech lead person, and this person will be responsible for the technology skills. They will help design the final product, assign which person is responsible for adding content to the final product, and are responsible for the overall color scheme, the layout, and revising the content and the layout when the product is complete. There are 4 steps to project-based learning activities: define, plan, do, and review. This unit, Grammar Guides Writing Rules, use the 6 Ds: define, discover, dream, design, deliver, and debrief to show students' learning process. In this explanation, I will align the 6 Ds into the 4 steps of a project-based model. The first student learning process step, define, involved inquiry and research skills as well. Students first create the questions they need to answer in order to complete the task and find research materials and evaluate each resource for credibility. The second student learning process, discover, can also be part of the PBL's define stage. Students will have to discover elements that might hinder students from understanding English rules for sentence structure. For example, if a student's first language is Spanish, how does the sentence structure rules in Spanish differ than English? And how might those rules confuse an English language learner? Students will have to ask questions about this topic, research, and connect how different language rules can confuse an English language learner. Prior to moving into the dream stage, students will have to identify a minimum of 3 ways to fix fragments and run-ons. Students will have to explain how different languages impact English learners. These will be checked by the instructor before moving on to the next step. The third student learning process step is dream. In this stage, students are visualizing what their final product will look like, as well as what content they will use in their instructional tutorial. Students will have to choose an audience they are gearing their tutorial to, determine what is popular within that age group to engage their audience, choose the color scheme and graphics to be used, and determine what technology tools they will need to complete this task. Students are now at the design stage in their learning process. After creating the original sentences, the next step is to create the script explaining how a group of words might be a sentence, what a group of words is missing that makes it a fragment, and where the first complete thought ends in a run-on sentence. Their script will also include revisions showing how to make a fragment a complete sentence and how to correctly divide or combine run-on sentences. In this stage, students will create their instructional tutorial, and by the end of this stage, a rough draft of the completed product will be ready for evaluation. The fifth step in the student's learning process is deliver. Once feedback has been used to make corrections, students will deliver their projects to the English language and special education teachers within the district. Their projects can be used with students of appropriate age groups to help learning students gain better understanding of English sentence structure. The final stage of the student learning process is debrief. In this stage, students will assess their own work as well as the work of their peers. I created 2 debriefing stages in my lesson. The first debriefing takes place after the design stage. The class will share their projects with each other to open a dialogue about the class rubric. Together, students will create a rubric using the guidelines categories suggested by the teacher when students get stuck. Viewing the projects again, feedback from students, themselves, and the teacher will be given to each group in order for them to make any corrections prior to the delivering stage. The second debriefing stage I incorporated happens when the project is complete. I created 3 questions to help students evaluate their group members, themselves, and the process of the project as a whole. The first question focuses on the process. I would like to hear from the students what worked well and what needs to change during the delivery of the activity. This will help me make revisions for the future use. The second question I am asking students is to focus on their group members. The purpose behind this is to gather anonymous feedback to hand out to each student in the class, letting them know strengths and weaknesses their group members saw in them. The third question focuses on individual evaluation. Students will evaluate themselves and their work ethic in the project. They identify strengths and weaknesses, but are then asked how would they change their weaknesses into strengths. Project-based learning is about student ownership and choice in content. While this project has a purpose, students have plenty of choice in how they deliver their project. Students can choose from multiple options to create their final project. As a teacher, I am also open to other ideas brainstormed by the students. As well as differentiation by product, this lesson can also be differentiated by content. By looking at the needs of all learners, scaffolding can be placed throughout the activity to assist all learners. Adjustments can be made for students below grade level, at grade level, and further challenges can be created for students above grade level. This also allows learning to be individualized, which is one of the major components of project-based learning. A basic rubric has been created, but specifics have not been added. This is where the class discussion will add, subtract, or change categories and/or descriptions in this rubric to gather formative and summative feedback from students and teachers. So is this activity an example of project-based learning? It uses the 6 Ds, define, discover, dream, design, deliver, and debrief to accomplish the 4 steps of the project-based learning model: define, plan, do, and review. The lesson has been aligned with curriculum standards, including technology standards, and opens students' learning to authentic real-world situations that involves the struggle many English language learners and special education students have in learning and using correct sentence structure. Going beyond just creating a project for fluff, students use research skills to gather information and evaluate credible material, develop a message, and learn how to problem solve through various social and curricular challenges. It creates student ownership throughout the activity, with students defining the problem and questions to answer what their final product would look like. This activity goes beyond asking students to create a product that can be utilized by district teachers to further help EL and special education students. This impact goes beyond the typical grade. Not only does the impact affect EL and special education students by building in further support, it also teaches the students creating the final products writing skills they will utilize throughout their lives in education and their careers. It stretches into other classrooms and into the community, passing lessons from students to students.